the codes that are, what North Strabane has in place. Asked them for their input, they were happy with what is on the books there, thought that it met their requirements. Now, again, what works for North Strabane doesn't necessarily work for Donegal, so we can amend this as is, but it's a good starting point to build off of.
Anybody else have any other comments?
No, I was okay.
What do you guys say?
I have some questions.
Tim?
Number 2, under the application and permit, it talks about all applications must comply
Yeah,
with the
that-
regulations.
Once we have this finalized, we'll have the correct citation for that.
Okay, and then, number 3, where it talks about the valid permits issued by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection and the Washington County Planning Commission? Is that, I mean, I was kind of confused of why this has, because it's in 3 and 4 about the Washington County Planning Commission.
But one says that before a permit's issued, you have to have that, and then this is saying that those permits are only valid for a period of a year.
Okay, but I didn't understand, it says that valid permits issued by the DEP and the Washington County Planning Commission? Do we have to go in front of the Washington County Planning Commission? That's, I mean, that's kind of what I'm at, you know what I mean, like,
Washington County Planning Commission would issue maybe an ENS control plan permit for moving dirt to make sure you're not dumping all your dirt on your neighbor's property.
so we don't come to this planning commission here.
That's who issues those permits for the county as it is. If you were, whether we have zoning or not, that's who issues, say, ENS control pit permits for the entire county.
Okay.
So
That was-
that's all I can think of that would go.
I mean, I was just, was that, I mean, it just kind of threw me off because it says, you know, I was like, why would we go to Washington County? That's why I was asking, you know what I mean? And then the other question I had was, in number 5, it talks about a inspection fee. We don't have that for any other, what do you want to call it? Any other thing in this.
Any other use,
And
there's
yeah,
no
and-
inspection fee paid by anybody else.
Right, so is this gonna single out this person as, you know, to have a fee for an inspection whenever we're not doing that for anyone else throughout the document?
Cool. I mean, what number are you referring to?
Number 5.
Number 5, it says
Okay.
each application, it says is accompanied by payment of an inspection fee. This is the only use in here that has an inspection fee. So, you know what I mean, like I said, so it's, I mean, you know, we don't have that for anything else. I just was questioning that. I mean, you know, there's junkyards that have to have a permit each year. There's, you know, there's other things that have to have a permit each year, but no other ones pay an inspection fee. That's why I was asking.
Does anyone have a opinion for having an inspection fee?
Oh, I thought you weren't allowed to when you only had one thing having it.
I guess that was our question, is it a permit and an inspection fee? Are they being hit twice?
Yeah, I mean, that would normally be set up by the resolution of fees, you know, how, when you update that.
So it's not really an inspection fee then, it's a.
I mean, I would think that when you go for a renewed permit, the township can confirm that you're still in compliance and you have the correct, so, yeah, I mean, I don't think you can double dip, do an inspection fee and the renewal permit. I think whatever costs that are associated with renewing that permit would have to be all put into one, into a
Can we-
renewal permit.
I mean, would it be wise to change that wording then, maybe a little bit, to say permit? I'm just,
I have a question.
So just take off of an inspection fee. Just strike that out, Tammy? That would cover it, wouldn't it?
yeah,
Should
I
be
mean,
accomplished by payment in the amount of, so we should, if you just scratch out of an inspection fee.
I would just say by payment of the applicable fees. That would.
that's, What's on that page?
And again, if the mobile home is determined that they need to have inspections, it can be a reasonable, you can pass on reasonable fees.
Right,
Yeah.
so,
Okay.
I think Eddie had a question.
oh, who did?
Eddie?
Oh, Eddie, you had a question on it.
Since sand mound's the only thing you can get approved around here, how many trailers can be on one sand mound?
One salmon?
Listen, Jason's house is one sand mountain, it's like $1 million shitter. I mean, it's a fortune, and it's one house. And that's and it goes by bedrooms, not by bathrooms, so.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know how you get it to, I don't know. All the sand mounds were dead.
Yeah, all the ones in Finland were on a couple years they failed.
Can I go on, or?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, okay. Number 8, it
Yep.
talks about, on page 13, it says, they shall be permitted to obtain zoning and building permits as prescribed by the township code. Again, when we refer to the word township code, are we referring to this, or are we referring to that white book, you know what I mean?
This will, eventually this will be incorporated into, the township code would include a chapter of zoning, but it would also have other regulations in it.
Okay, like I
Yeah.
said, it just kind of threw me off when it says code, because I don't, you know what I mean, like I said, so,
And without looking in this, I'm sure there are building regulations in here already, in the township code.
well, that leads me back to we'll get back to the next, there's chapter 27, which,
Of the township code.
yes, but it's referred to still in this document as chapter 27, it's not within this code here. Does that make sense when I say that?
There's chapter 27
Yeah,
in
I've-
the township code, the
yes,
white book. Okay.
yes, I believe that's the building, it says
The UCC?
Okay, okay.
UCC,
The
yeah.
UCC, okay.
Right, and the term 27,
The chapter
the
27.
is still referred to in this document as well. We'll get to it at some point, you know what I mean, but it's still referred to. So should that chapter be put into this then?
No, that would be a standalone. I mean, again, if you want everything into one document, but that's
I'm just-
typically a building code is a standalone document, that's not
Because
incorporated
it's
into the
only a
zoning
page and a
book.
half. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just
I mean-
asking that, yeah.
That's typically, that's more of a formatting or
Okay.
personal preference thing, but that's not uncommon to have a standalone building section with any township code.
Okay.
It's not directly in the zoning ordinance.
Okay, and then on page 14, it talks about, 14, number 2, the first I, it says they shall conform with 503 of this chapter.
Yeah, and again, I didn't change any of this, because I didn't know
Okay.
what we were keeping, what we were changing, what we weren't, so, these would, if we're okay with the reference, if we wanna be able to regulate these items, then we would put them in with the building code or with the applicable.
Because I don't know if we have anything that talks about the traffic. You know what I mean? That's kind of why I was asking. And then same with, the next one down is 402, where it talks about a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, same exact thing. If you have nothing that deals with cul-de-sacs,
No.
Probably not in subdivision ordinance, but that, I mean, streets are usually.
Yeah, vehicles and traffic.
So I'm just asking,
I don't think we have a cul-de-sac in the township.
I don't know, do we even have a cul-de-sac in this town? Bus, do we have a cul-de-sac?
A cul-de-sac in the township? I don't know.
Do I have one?
No, does anybody?
Does anybody have one?
Is there one in the township?
I don't think there is.
Yeah, so if there's no cul-de-sac, and we don't want to regulate that, then that can be eliminated.
Okay, I mean, you know, again, I just was, okay.
However, you could have a cul-de-sac.
I mean, like I said, I'm just asking if we have anything in regulation, I didn't think we had anything ready for that.
That, again, North Reading has a provision for that, or the only ones to have that.
Here you go, Dee.
Incorporate that.
Ronnie's gonna hold it. Just hold on.
Don't want
Did you
any
leave me?
type of reference
Stuck
to
forever?
regulate cul-de-sacs, then we eliminate.
That was a rookie mistake there, man. You knew better than that.
She wants to know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'll leave it in there.
Can't believe she do me that way.
And the important part of that provision is that no street in the mobile home park shall end within the dead end within the park, so that they don't come
Right.
somewhere and have no ability to turn around. We want to provide them the opportunity so they can safely make the turn and make their way back out.
So I would say that shall conform to that, the applicable provisions of the township code. Now, again, I know that has you jumping around, but again, as the township code, as that changes, as it's updated, whatever the standards may be at that time, if someone would come in, they would have to comply with that road standard that's in place at that time. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, and then on page 17, K, number 4. Yeah, there's a K. Am I still, I'm make sure I'm still- okay, K. It talks about the management shall maintain a register containing the names and address of all park occupants. Such registry shall be available for any authorized person inspecting the park. Okay, that gets into some, my question is, this is a legal issue, okay? If I have a tenant that comes in and I want to run a background check on them or anything, I can do that because I've got their permission. But for me to turn around and give it out to somebody, you know what I mean, can I do that? I mean.
You can give the name of someone living in it, those are legal, to have a rental ordinance in place where you have to update, if you have a rental property, you have to update with who's living there, so
Yeah,
it's on
but-
file with the police. But to give that whole background, no, I don't think this, does this ask for that?
Well, our current occupancy permit within this town asks me to list the name of everyone that lives there, along with their ages, and the places of where they work, and if they're handicapped. So that's what I'm asking, like, you know, that's a lot of information that they have access to.
Yeah.
That, you know, maybe my people, that I didn't think I had to get out. So I was just asking if
Yeah,
that
I
is
mean,
legal.
here, to me, this is okay, a name and address of the
Okay.
occupant, so that you know who is living in the township, so that the police are aware in the event of emergency, in the event of an accident, in the event of a break-in or something, you know,
Right, right.
we're
Okay.
cognizant of who's here. I understand your concern with some of the other questions, and I know that comes up in the adult uses section as well, but to hear, I don't think that's overreaching, from a legal standpoint. Again, people can differ on what should be given out and what's public knowledge, but from a legal standpoint, I don't think that provision is overreaching.
All right, and page 13, number 7. When it says current mobile home parks in existence at the date of the adoption may be continued as long as they remain lawful. Is there anything on the books, what would make them not lawful, or, I guess, currently, I don't believe they have to do a yearly permit. Would they now have to do a yearly permit, or do they only if they become unlawful? Current mobile home parks will have to have a permit too?
Yes. But if there was something that they cannot get because it wasn't required at that time, you know, part of the permit, and they're no, you know, they're grandfathered in under that provision, that they can't meet that, they can't reach that, they wouldn't have to meet that aspect of the permit.
But they still are now going to pay a yearly permit fee.
And there's a fee for that inspection or that permit every year?
That would be set by the board.
On number 3, it's, existing mobile home park, which in the opinion of the Board of Supervisors creates a safety hazard. Shouldn't that be the code enforcement officer? I don't know if necessarily you wanna. An opinion is, a little tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that.
On page 17, on L, on the revocation permit,
Yep.
there's someone called municipal inspector. I think we need to get everything together as in the code enforcement officers. There's, and it's varying places, I know, because it's cobbled together from several different places. There, it'd be better to have one person.
Inspection twice in there, I see.
Because in fact, on page 18, under junkyards, it's listed as a licensing officer. I don't know if they mean secretary or who that would be at this point, but. And what's the difference between a license and a permit? When you go to page 19?
Again, I
It's just
I think we talked about that last time, I think it's,
It's just a
yep.
phrase.
So, I mean, we could even put in, we could even put in
Oh,
the
yeah.
definition section, just to clarify that any reference to.
To a license and permit.
Does that, yeah, does that make sense instead of trying
I think that's all we have to measure.
Oh, except at the end of junkyards on 21, the mobile home park reference, that ordinance reference parks that were currently in, they were already existing. Does the junkyard one also need to reference junkyards that are currently in existence? Or is it because they already have?
So you're just saying under A?
Yeah,
Under-
just
under-
when you reference the mobile home.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, it would be implied, but again, to JD's point, let's just cover it, so we don't.
I'm on 21.
You're on 21, I think you're on 18. I know. Oh, you're up here.
So you wanted under J, license renewal number, just a new number two?
Yeah, just the same way as you reference the ones that are already there, that way.
Yep. Does anyone else have a, or are you back on?
No, I'm on the junkyards
Okay.
next. which-
Does anyone have any comments regarding mobile homes? All right, we can move on, so we'll move on to the board, to junkyards, for comments, questions, concerns.
No one on the board has any questions or comments? Let me go first.
Under number 2, it says again, it shall be unlawful for any person to possess junkyard or a junk vehicle as defined under 54-2 of this chapter. Does that need to be removed? Because we took it out, I believe it was 54.
Yeah, and we put junk vehicles in, or did not. I mean, again, so I would say,
I mean, can,
it is covered under the nuisance, but this kind of this, since we're dealing with junkyards and a junk vehicle, I think that's just stating that if you wanna, if you're not rising to the level of a junkyard, you've gotta go get a permit. That's just directing people to that.
okay, can we put what that chapter, like, in, like, you know what I mean, like, can we put the title in of that chapter? You know what I mean, because, I mean, I could go around and say, well, where's 54-2?
So
And
as,
you
It's
know-
not 54-2 of the chapter, it's 50.
yeah,
Yeah.
at 54-2, yeah.
Right,
I
right.
see.
And then,
And we'll call it the, whatever the junkyard, whatever the official,
right.
yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Specifically 54-2. Okay. We can have that.
And also, I don't know, but junkyards is not on the list on page 5. You know what I mean? It's not in the, it's not on the list anymore on
Okay.
5 and 6. It just needs to be added.
And then do we have a determination?
Yeah, it's on there, it's
It
number
is?
3, yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay,
in
I'm sorry.
parentheses, but it's there.
I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
And it's a permitted use, okay.
I'm done, thank you.
Kathy?
Built-oriented establishments, page
Oh, hold
21.
on.
Oh, wait.
You're
Still
done.
on
You-
I'm done,
Does anyone have comments on JD?
I guess the first thing would be right above that, it applies to junkyards, but under automobile services, sales, service, and fuel stations.
Where you at, JD?
It would be page 18, sorry, page 18, 303.5.
Okay.
Last paragraph D, as a reference junkyards, it says township code requirements associated with junkyards and associated activities shall apply. So it's not in there. If you don't have a code book, I assume that's referring to the code book. I don't think we ever, as I recall, there's been a lot of discussion about the code book and the inconsistency thereof. Some board members have it, some don't, some match, some don't, some of the public has it, some don't, and they're not consistent. So how do you know what's in that if it's not in here as it applies, for one? And the rules, regulations, requirements of junkyards should be for junkyards, not for sales, service, and fuel stations. It's not the same thing. If somebody, okay, we're looking forward to industry, okay? Somebody wants to put in a Pennzoil 10-minute oil change. Why would they be subject to the same requirements of a junkyard? What if it's just an inspection station, or a car wash, or, you know what I mean? And I don't know what those requirements are, because they're not in here.
I mean, I would think that a majority of the requirements under junkyards that we just reviewed would apply for an automobile service, based on what that D was meant to say. Because it's referencing that chapter, and we basically incorporated that chapter into here. So the idea behind D would be that an automobile service station would have to get a license, and the main thing would be, in addition to the license, would be under H, general operating requirements, talking about, shall at all times be maintained in a sanitary condition, the flammable, combustible materials kept away, we changed that to junk not to be stored in piles exceeding 8 feet. My thought would be that's what the idea behind that reference was. Now, whether or not we want to keep that is a different question, but that's referencing chapter 54, which we essentially taken out and put in right underneath there. So those would be the requirements that D would be referring to.
You saying chapter 54 is in this?
Chapter 54 of the code
Okay.
is the junkyard and junk dealers section. We removed that from the code and put it specifically into the zoning ordinance, so that's all, so you're not flipping around.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying, so you're saying chapter 54
So
is
chapter
is
50,
in the
almost
zoning?
all of chapter 54, there's a couple of things of chapter 54 that dealt with nuisances, that just dealt with junk vehicles, that is not pertaining to zoning, that we're not incorporating into this. But for the regulations for a junkyard, talking about a license, talking about, like I just said, under H, the general requirements for operating, those items would be what would apply under D, what the intent behind D was. Because, you know, when this D was put in, it was referencing chapter 54 before we made the decision to bring chapter 54 directly into the zoning ordinance. So if we wanted D to state what the idea behind it was when this provision was put in, it would say all uses for an automobile service shall require, how does it say?
Township code requirements associated with junkyards and associated activities shall
So I
apply.
would say requirements associated with junkyards contained in section 303.6 herein shall apply.
So if this goes through the way it's written now, anybody that, let's say, take the BP down there,
Okay.
okay? They have to apply for and pay for a yearly junk license?
It would be a permit.
Yearly.
As he's set up now, it'd be an annual permit.
Even though they're already established? They're already there, wouldn't they be grandfathered in?
They wouldn't have to get approval to be there.
So this is just a hidden tax then, is what, right? It's a B&O tax, right? A business tax?
I would say it's a compliance.
Regulate and comply.
So, again,
Regulate and
if you're
comply.
asking the inspector to go out to make sure that they're in compliance, that they fill out their permit, and you just check off the few items to make sure that they're in compliance with that they have the proper licenses that they need with the state or with the county, whatever they may be, as long as they're in compliance with that,
Yeah.
that's essentially what my idea.
All coming down to money. Regulating you off your land, taxing you off your land.
What is the red? What's the red highlight?
That's what we changed from before.
Okay.
Because the yellow is everything that was new under
So-
this draft, but we changed, I think, whatever was in here. I thought, JD, we talked about, we wouldn't even.
So I have
just so
a,
we could tell
Okay, I
them.
just did that.
I have a follow-up on that. Are you gonna tax all the businesses in the township then, or just auto
required
businesses?
That would be by the regulation of fees, the fee schedule they set up, if there's permits required or not, and what that cost would
Good, but
be.
it's in here right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering, you singled out auto
Karen, I think I'm
businesses, right?
2 dead cars in my yard. I'm gonna have to yell at Josh.
I didn't single them out.
I think I'm gonna have to get a
This
permit.
paper does.
To get rid of
It doesn't, no, there's other permits and license requirements.
Yeah,
Now I have to get a license for the junkyard.
but not all businesses.
I'm not sure, we'd have to go through and double check.
So I lived in a township that only allowed 2 unregistered, non-inspected vehicles. And the township police come out and harass. Would that, so if I got 2 vehicles in my yard that I pay taxes on, would the zoning officer come out and start fining me?
That's in the new, that's already in there.
This says one.
That's already on.
That's already in there?
That's already in there, that's a nuisance, that's not a zoning matter.
But it's still in there.
It's already in, that's
Okay.
already in the township code.
It's in the book you gotta buy.
the property.
Only one?
It says, "It shall be unlawful for any person," don't say junkyard business, whatever, "it shall," which means, that's a fact. "It shall be unlawful for any person to possess, or possess, I don't know if that's spelled right, junk vehicle." It doesn't say junk vehicles or a junk vehicle, and there's no number. It says junk vehicle, as defined under 54.2 of this chapter.
which is unlicensed and
without first obtaining a license required therein, whether or not that person intends to buy or offer for sale any such junk. No license shall be required. Now, here's something that I also have an issue with. No such license shall be required when the junk vehicles are considered to be antique or classic and are stored inside an enclosed building. Now, I would highly suggest that you take that last part of that sentence out, because if it's stored inside of a building, you guys don't have any right to say what they store in a building. If it's antique or classic, it should be excluded. If it's stored in a building, I don't care if it's antique or classic or not,
Well,
that shouldn't be in there.
Why wouldn't they have the right to do that? They have the right to tell you what your hours of operation
That's
are.
just it, they don't. I wanna get clarification on something that just came to light in the last 5 minutes, that I want to make and understand crystal clear. So what you're saying is the way this is written, as I see it, is, Michael, are you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the way this is now written, all right? It's implied, intended, or it's stated as a matter of fact that myself and Eddie, and we'll just use us two for an example, will now have to apply for a permit/license for a junkyard
No,
permit, right? Is
No.
that,
these regulations that are in here right now are what's on the books right now. I was asked to just bring those into the zoning ordinance, so there's nothing on here other than the red that's not already on the books right now in the township. That's in chapter, if you look at chapter 54 of your township code, these regulations are on there. I'm looking right at it.
okay, I understand that.
So it's not being created as part of this, that's already on the books.
I understand that, but you just said that he used the example for BP, Cohen, and you said, yes, they will have to apply for this permit. Even though they're already established prior to the zoning, they will have to get a permit. That's what you said.
An annual permit, yes.
So you're also saying that myself and Ed will as well, correct? Just to use two people that are sitting here, for example.
I'm not following along. If you already, do you operate a junkyard in the township?